Okay, guys, we're ready. Ready? Namu Amida Butsu, 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 Namu Amida Butsu. Good morning. Welcome to our service from the New York Buddhist Church. Thanks to those who came out today on this rainy day, and thanks for those who are watching home. The video is being done by David Brady from Utah, so it will not be the usual razzmatazz that we often have, but it will be nonetheless something to see. And so thank you all for coming. And so before we start, we'll do silent meditation for a few minutes, and then we will chant JÖ-SEI-GE. And the text for that is on page, I believe it's 93. Yes, 93 in the purple book. Sit with your back straight, feet on the floor, and follow your breath. Isabel, we have begun. And now please turn to page 93 for Sutra chanting JÖ-SEI-GE. Amida Butsu, Namu 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 Amida Butsu. And now please rise for the Vandana and Ti-Sarana, which is found on page 167.
To him, the Good morning, everyone, and welcome. And happy Pride. Happy Pride Month. I gave some thought to what reading I might do today. And I selected actually this these words from the Reverend Jundo Gregory Gibbs from Pasadena Buddhist Temple. You may not know, but the Buddhist Churches of America, BCA, which is our parent organization, has been supportive of pride, of gender equality, as well as same-sex union for many, many, many decades. And I think Reverend Gibbs' thoughts incorporate that and reflect the attitude of most of the BCA ministers. What is implied about your identity and mine by denial of the soul theory is that we are not, each of us, uniquely self-same. Your identity is not uniquely your own. My identity is not uniquely my own. As John Lennon once put it in charmingly simple fashion, I am he as you are he, as you are me, as we are all together. In other words, we are each the big thing. We are each reality, such as it truly is. We are each unique presentation of Buddha nature. We are each unique appearances of the one universe. This could not be true if the basis for our personal identity consisted of our having a soul. As the Heart Sutra puts it, emptiness, one term for reality, such as it truly is, only exists as specific forms. The universe only takes shape in particular forms, such as you and me. Our uniqueness comes from our specific relationships to others and from the qualities we have as individuals. Our uniqueness does not involve our being some ghostly soul things. That would separate us. That would make the universe split into meaningless multiplicity. That would disappoint both Shakyamuni Buddha and John Lennon. We certainly would not want to do that. Nembutsu. 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 So it's our great pleasure today to have as speaker our Reverend Gary Shobo Jaskula. Nembutsu.
Hello, welcome this morning. Happy Pride. This is LGBT Pride Month, and I would like to start this little Dharma talk, which will probably meander here and there, but eventually come back to some of the things that we just heard. If we could turn to page 108 in the Gatha, in the service book, the purple service book. I'm going to read from the Amida, the shorter sutra. The lotus flowers in the lakes, large as chariot wheels, are blue-colored with blue splendor, yellow-colored with yellow splendor, and red-colored with red splendor, white-colored with white splendor, and they are most exquisite and purely fragrant. Shariputra, the land Sukhavati is arranged with such excellent qualities and adornments. Sukhavati is the Pure Land. And I know there's that reverb, and there's nothing I can do about it. Okay, so I hope we're picking up at home. If not, then we're not. But I'm going to start again. From the Amida Kyo. The lotus flowers of the lakes, large as chariot wheels, are blue-colored with blue splendor, yellow-colored with yellow splendor, red-colored with red splendor, white-colored with white splendor, and they are most exquisite and purely fragrant. Shariputra, the land Sukhavati is arrayed with such excellent qualities and adornments. And I am very grateful to Shakyamuni Buddha for providing a nice rainbow trope for us to start our Dharma talk today. And but I would like also to point out that, in various ministers talking about this sutra, the Amida Kyo, it is customary, it's addressed to Shariputra. Shariputra, there are these lotus flowers. Shariputra, did you not know the jewels are very bright? Shariputra, etc. And what you're supposed to do to really make it alive for you is substitute your own name for Shariputra. So Daisan, the land of Sukhavati, is arrayed with such excellent qualities and amenities. Isabel, the land Sukhavati is arranged with such excellent qualities and adornments. Brian, the land Sukhavati is arranged with such excellent qualities and adornments. So give me a moment. And notice that in Sukhavati, those flowers become even more bright. Not different. They don't change from one to another. You go to Sukhavati and your purple flower becomes chartreuse or something like that. No, they stay the same, and they're more so and more perfect. And how fitting it is that the religion of come as you are, our Jodo Shinshu teaching, should celebrate the colors of all flowers with more intensity and more radiance in the Pure Land. Not blended into a single color, but intensified in their differences. And as Reverend Gibbs's little talk that Reverend Isabel read is very apt. BCA is a very welcoming place that is very much part of this particular denomination of Buddhism. It's true of all Buddhism, but in particular, it's true of our denomination. They have been very supportive over the years, and I came in here 20-something years ago. There was never any question that they were a welcoming place, and so with that, that's the religious part of this Dharma talk, and you can now go to sleep if you want to tune out. But I was asked by some to give this talk today on LGBTQ for Pride Week, and I said yes. However, I was reluctant because I wanted the message to be positive, I wanted it to be attractive, and I didn't feel that I was like the right person for that. I have never been one of those young, dynamic, well-adjusted people that everyone likes and stuff like that. So I am a complicated, ornery old guy, and that is kind of what I am. And but I'll give it a good shot anyway. So I thought and really thought about it. And what could I say? I mean, I could give you what you might expect in some of this thing. I could talk about being gay or having a different journey, how I came to this church. And for some people that really might be cogent for their lives. But for me it wasn't, because I was in midlife already when I came here, and I was really at peace with that part of my life. I wasn't expecting to be beaten up, and I wasn't, you know, very fortunate, but for Pride Week, the message I want to talk about is something different. You know, right now we have a really negative thing going on in our society, and actually worldwide. Everyone wants to push back the clock. Not everyone, but a lot of people, and some very noisy people, want to push back the clock and to make it go away. And they want to use religion to do that. Many of them are. And I want to talk about something that's very negative and unpleasant. I'll try to do it as lightheartedly as I can. But what I really want to talk about is something I really have direct knowledge of from my youth, which is the closet. The closet is the worst thing that we can do to ourselves and to each other. It just is. You know, it just is. And that's the solution that many in certain types of politics and certain religious things that you hear about, that's the solution that they're proposing. Oh, we don't hate you, just go back in the closet. And I want to talk about that closet. The closet is really a very, very fearful place to be. And what happens in the closet is that you sometimes, in my case, it was definitely true, you identify with your tormentors, you know, and then you begin to deny who you are and pretend that you're not that, and maybe even harm others along the way. You know, it is not new to find out that the worst persecutors for LGBT are often other people who are LGBT themselves. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. The Inquisition was full of such people, just for one, but there are many, many forms of this. And, you know, they do it sometimes because they're afraid themselves. And, you know, let me talk about that a little bit. So it's a bad place, but, you know, it was also how I was raised. I mean, I'm almost 70 now. So I was raised in the 50s and early 60s as a child, and it was in, you know, and in those days, middle America, you know, Leave It to Beaver country, that's the way it was. No one ever talked about these things. Ever, you know? But the problem was, of course, I stayed there way, way too long. Okay, so I grew up in a world that did not admit to even the existence of LGBT. That word did not even exist at that time. They had some other words, which I would say here, but maybe I shouldn't because it's a church. But those existed, those people, they existed, and they were not good. And you didn't want to be one. So I was a good religious boy. You know, I grew up in a religion that was not open to this. They weren't necessarily out there persecuting, per se, in a direct way. There were some people who had much worse than I did. I mean, it was, you know, I didn't have conversion therapy or any of that type of thing. But, you know, it was just very frowned upon. And you didn't want to be, if you were of a certain persuasion, LGBT, you were not supposed to associate with others. That would be a bad thing. And so, you know, everything was designed to, like, keep you down. But whatever happened, I wasn't going to be one of those. I thought it would, in those days, it was thought to be a phase. It really was. I mean, it's hard to imagine today. It's sort of hilarious, but it was a phase. Oh, you went through it. You had inklings, but they would go away. It would all settle down. And I believed that, because early on, I kind of realized what I was. Well, that I wasn't, not what I was. I realized that it wasn't working the way it was supposed to work. It was something else. And I knew that, but I also knew that it was a phase. And I went on with my thing. But the thing is, others knew. People in my family, people in my neighborhood. And as I became an older kid, they realized, without actually saying anything to me, that I was different, and began to be excluded, so I didn't like to play cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians. I wanted to play ancient Egypt or Greek mythology or so. And there was a point where parents would tell their kids in my school, don't play with him anymore. And it got back to me, not that what they were really talking about, but that somehow something had been done, some transgression had been made, and I became very isolated. And this was in the family, and my parents totally bought into that. They had they were not highly educated people. I mean, they were good in their own way, but they were not like many families in this congregation where everyone has a certain education and support. There's mutual support. Every time I go to these funerals that we do, and the families speak so well of the parents, kids speak so well of the parents, I'm always so impressed and jealous. I mean, I never had this when I was a kid. I always had disapproval. You are not the kind of son I wanted. And that was true of both parents. But in any event, I didn't play sports. I liked to play ancient Egypt and Roman Empire. And as an adolescent, it just got worse. Of course, I had become much more sophisticated about it. And I went to a high school in a different town than the one that I grew up in to get away from the negativity. And but unfortunately, at that time, it was a nice high school, but it was a jock high school. And it was just more of the same, more of the same for me. So don't ask, don't tell. Remember that? That's the way life was. And while I was in high school, Stonewall occurred, but it didn't come to us. And when it did, I never identified with it. It was like, ooh, because I was not that. So that's the closet. Okay, so later, when I became more of an adult, an incident occurred that I'll just mention it, not to say poor Gary, but just to show, I'm just trying to show the reality of these things for an ordinary kid, a little kid, But now I'm more of a young adult. And I'm coming home from work. I was working in the city. And coming down the street, and all of a sudden the kids came out of nowhere and started calling me names. Particular one name begins with F and ends with T, which you all know. And I was really shocked and didn't know what to do and what had provoked that. I had certainly never done anything with them. I had never made eye contact or anything with anyone in my town. It was like I just went through it, But within a few days, that became a regular occurrence on my little trip home, and they started to throw rocks at me. And I went into the house, and I had like a real meltdown. And I really felt alone. There was no one that I could talk to. My parents would have said, well, they should throw rocks at you. They were like, Could I go to the cops? No, they were not, part of the town, that was the way things were. And that was a real dark place at that time. And eventually I worked around it because I was trapped there. I couldn't leave. My mother was mentally ill, and I couldn't have left the house right at that time. But eventually I was able to leave there and come to New York. And New York was here in New York, nobody cares what you are, so it's a whole different thing. And it was at that point, I remember at that point when I was at my deepest, that I came to sort of a realization that, well, if they're going to throw rocks at me, then I might as well do something worth throwing rocks for. Why am I being such a fool? So when I did come to New York, I eventually came out. I developed new people, that kind of thing, and another phase of my life started. But I really didn't put any of that stuff away. I just put it under the rug. So the closet, although it was over, it's still there. And so even though I was in a different milieu to my family and, my extended family, my aunts, uncles, all of that, I was still, the little kid that played with pots and pans who was that way. That's what I was. And I just basically had nothing to do with them at that point. And so let's just fast forward. I'm not going to go into it's not my life story for nothing here. There's a point to this. There was one point when I was safely in my new life, in New York. I had an apartment. I had a few apartments, and I was in one particular, and I got a message from a cousin that I had not seen in at least 15, 16 years, and he was a chief petty officer doing very dangerous work in the Navy. Okay, and if you saw this guy, he was like Johnny Cash with a mohawk. He was like hyper masculine. And he had just been discharged from the Navy. He was married to a second wife, actually. And he wanted to come to see me. He was in Utah, and he wanted to come to see me. And he really wanted to come to see me. And he started alluding to things from childhood, like, do you still like to play? But when I was a kid, I was the kid that played with pots and pans as opposed to football. So he would allude to some of that stuff, and I'm like, all my hackles go up. It's like, it's conversion therapy. He's in Utah. He wants to come here to convert me to something, And so I just pushed him off and pushed him off and pushed him off, and they really insisted on coming, and I was like freaking out. And of course, this is ridiculous, because if I had been, more integrated into my life, I would have said, look, I'm gay, come on over. But no, that wasn't how it was. I was still in this fear, locked in fear. And this is decades before becoming a Buddhist, okay? So just so you can understand this. But in any event, so they come, he and his wife. I tell all of my friends, do not call me, do not come to the house, do not drop by to borrow sugar, any of that stuff. and I'll tell you when the coast is clear, don't send me messages, nothing. And so they came, and I cleared the schedule for them, and it was around Christmas time, so I thought of things for them to do. We would go. So they wanted to talk about. They started doing innuendos, nothing direct. It was very like the family,
It was all about my little things that, you know, well, you know, my mother, my aunt told me about you, that kind of thing. And I'm going, well, it's fine, you know. And so we went, so I took them to the Rockefeller Center tree, I took them to the library, I took them, you know, to all kinds of things. And every time they brought up the subject, which is like every hour or so, I just pretended it was not even there. and it went on like this for 4 days. They were in my apartment, I gave them the bedroom, you know, it was just hell on earth. And finally, we were in this restaurant and they really were pushing again. And I had enough, you know, so I said, look, you're talking about all these things. He says, but I am gay. I am. I have been forever, you know. So what is it that you want? So you know, and I was expecting them to say, come to Jesus or something like that. But my cousin said, and I'll never forget it, I know. That's why we came here, because I'm transgender. And I just flipped out. I started crying and laughing simultaneously, actually. And his wife was there, you know, and this was very hard on her. And you know, you're the only family member I felt we could talk to. And I said, and I've been dragging you around the city, doing everything else, and we should have been shopping for shoes, you know, for high heels, you know, or something like that. That isn't my particular thing, but that's what I was trying to communicate to him. So I took them to a drag show, and then we began to have this conversation. And I put them actually in touch with other people that I knew. And the reason I'm telling this unsavory story is because a good Buddhist who was comfortable with themselves would have immediately been able to pick up that here's another suffering person, but I was not there at all. I wasn't a Buddhist yet either. But that doesn't mean anything. It's how you are as a person. You know, I was so into my own closeted fears, even though they were no longer necessary. But I was still there up here, that I did not hear the cry for help that was right in front of me and wasn't going away for 4 days. And you know, I was totally, in super, I don't know how to call it, what I should say, super, like I just had that 10-foot pole and I wanted to keep them right there, you know. So I was just protecting myself. So this is really something that I now want to integrate with the Dharma, because this is theoretically a Dharma talk, and even though you've heard Dharma at the beginning. There's a reason. I heard a Dalai Lama's speech once, a small one, and it's general Buddhism, you know, not a particular Tibetan form of it, but he talks about how to live a good life. And I think this is true in Jodo Shinshu as well. And I just want to talk about it because it goes with what I just talked about. We recognize, he says, the four noble truths: that suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the way to the end of suffering. And we realize that we are not really, as individuals, exactly what we thought we were. That we are, in fact, made up of other things, that we are not permanent, that we are interconnected, and then we start to focus on the right things, about those things, and leave off the fancy theories and isms I talked about last week. Just leave those off, and that you become more whole. I think that's true. Whether it's you encounter Namu, Amida, Butsu, or you encounter the Four Noble Truths in the other schools, it's the same thing. It's identical, actually. Okay, so you become more whole, just recognizing what your place in the world actually is. And then the Dalai Lama says, we realize that we are social animals. We are not only individuals. Actually, we defeat the idea of being individuals. We are social animals. So we're part of a whole, not only physically, but also in society with its laws and customs and philosophies, sciences, all that stuff. Okay? And we participate in that, whether we want to or not. That's part of being a human. And so as a human, we want to engage in the world. We want to engage. We don't say, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. You want to engage in the world, even if it's, even if it's some kind of abstinence or something like that. But I'm not going there in Jodo Shinji. You don't have to do that. But you're engaging, with the world. And we have to take care of the planet. We have to, because we're all in it together, and then when we do that, even if it's only a little bit, even if we don't have the circumstances to be a great thinker or a great legislator or something like that, but we have the circumstances to be a sentient person in society. Okay, when we embrace that and we take care of each other, we do feel better. We know we're doing the right thing, even if things don't work out the way we want them to. And we become, the Dalai Lama says, more confident as human animals, more confident. Okay, so taking my silliness, the self-centeredness and protecting of myself pushed away people, where being more open might have, well, it would have come to the same thing in the end, but it would have taken, it took probably a long time. It would have taken much less time if I had been more open, and this is like something about life. This is something about life. This is the way our actual lives interact with real Dharma. Okay, so the closet is a manifestation of the derangement that we all feel at different points, whatever walk of life or whatever orientation or particular subset of that whole thing we call the human being is. As long as we try to protect and keep harm away, and not focus on suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the way to the end of suffering, we're going to suffer. But when we open ourselves to those things, then we kind of, the Dalai Lama would say, you kind of give up your life, but it's to find this greater life. Find this greater life. So yeah, you can do this in the family, you can do this in the school, you can do this in the workplace, you can do this everywhere. And that's living the Dharma. And in our tradition, we have Namu Amida Butsu. Namu is the finite being, the being of limited possibilities, limited because of ignorance, greed, and anger, the poisons. So that's the closeted person. That's the overly proud person that only sees their particular thing and forgets all the other ones. Okay? There's that. We become selfish, where we become hyper gay, we become hyper straight, we become hyper whatever it is, hyper, economic theories, and hyper monarchists, or hyper whatever, hyper racists, those kind of things. That's Namu. But not any old Namu. That's Namu knowing that that's what you are. Then there's Amida Butsu, light and life itself. And in the teaching of Shinran, through the directing of going and coming, Amida Buddha takes all of these negative qualities and transforms them into their opposite. Namu Amida Butsu. So silly, afraid person becomes open, compassionate through the Buddha's guidance. Even if in regular life it may not work out perfectly. It's not like you have to qualify to live this life. It really is something that embraces you, and it embraces all of us. And as we started, we become flowers in the Pure Land, right? The Pure Land is the lotuses come up through the mud, and when they reach for the light, eventually they get to the surface of the water, and the lily pads are there, and the lotus opens up. And that lotus is a symbol of absolute purity. It comes from the mud and the brackish water, but it becomes the symbol of purity itself. It becomes so pure that it's a suitable throne for the Buddha. Okay, and when we are reborn, they say, the image that is used in the Pure Land Sutra, when we are reborn into the Pure Land, we open up in a lotus. So it has this attachment to the world of becoming, but it transcends it and becomes a lotus. And it is said that the lotus flowers, large as chariot wheels, are blue-colored with blue splendor, yellow-colored with yellow splendor, and red-colored with red splendor, white-colored with white splendor, and they are most exquisite and purely fragrant. So, let us all live our lives and be exactly who we are. Gay, straight, lesbian, bi, trans, plus, whatever that is. Whatever it is, it's okay. It's okay. So let us place our palms together in thanksgiving for the teaching of Amida Buddha and the teaching of Shinran Shonin, who taught it to us, that we too will be transformed into the Pure Land by saying the name Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Reverend Gary, for your sublimely honest, moving, compassionate, and insightful talk today. Certainly, I was riveted, as I think everyone was here. And thank you for reminding us that when we put our hands together and say Namu Amida Butsu, the Buddha's great compassion opens to all of us, regardless of how we may identify ourselves. Within the embrace of Amida Tathagata, we are each of us looked upon as if we were an only child, and given that love and compassion and understanding just as we are. There are no qualifiers. Just as we are embraced by the Buddha's compassion. And in gratitude, we respond by saying the name, acknowledging that we are all not separated, but we are all one in that compassionate light. So thank you very much, Reverend Gary, for that talk. We will now have our Gatha, Namu Amida Butsu. Please place your palms together. And rise if you can.
Page 174.
Please be seated.
This comes to the close of our service. I want to first and foremost thank our speaker today, Reverend Gary Shobo Jaskula, for his talk. And also a shout out to Brian, who suggested that Gary give the talk today. Thank you for making that suggestion. and thank all of you for coming and all of you who are listening. It is your participation in this service that makes it so real and so vital and vibrant for all of us in this community. And if you are interested in joining our community, our very welcoming community, please come to our service. You can find our full schedule on our webpage, newyorkbuddhistchurch.org. Just go to the place, the page marked calendar, and you can also go to our community page and see various classes and other events that we are offering at present, still online, including meditation on Wednesday evenings with Reverend Gary and Reverend Cheryl, as well as other classes which are ordered. We also really value your interest in becoming a member. And if you go to membership page, you'll find a membership form and all the benefits of becoming a member. And of course, we appreciate your dana. Any donations you make are most welcome and goes towards supporting this facility. So in closing, just a few announcements. Next week will be a very special service because we welcome as a guest our Kyokucho, our district leader and supervising minister, Reverend Ron Miyamura, to New York Buddhist Church. He will actually be physically here after an absence of several years due to the pandemic, and we are really looking forward to welcoming him and sharing the Dharma with him. So please join our service next week. That will be at 11:30 as per usual. Are there any other announcements from the Sangha?
No. Pride Parade.
Pride Parade, I left out a very important one. Reverend Gary, why don't you come and please give the details and also lead us in closing Gassho, please.
Oh, okay. So Pride Parade is being run this year by Sodaiko. So they are doing all the heavy lifting for Pride Parade, and we get to go with them if we wish to, and I'll be going, and I hope some others will go. And we'll be going down Fifth Avenue. So if you are interested in going with us, send an email either to me or to Isabel at 331-332 NYBC, is that what it is?
NYBC.org.
NYBC.org, and we'll get it to Sodaiko. I don't want to give out their email because I asked them and they didn't respond to that, so just, and I can understand. But in any event, we'll sign you up and then we'll give you information as we get it. So thank you so much, and let us have closing Gassho with gratitude for the teachings of Shinran, and to really have had over such a long time so many Dharma friends and so many Dharma adventures together. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. So thank you so much. See you next time.